On May 6, 2021, Bloomberg News reported that AT&T was considering a merger with WarnerMedia and Discovery Inc. to form a new publicly traded company. AT&T and Discovery would officially confirm this agreement the next day, and they would structure the merger as a reverse mortgage trust. The new company would be led by Discovery CEO David Zaslav, with WarnerMedia CEO Jason Killer's position unknown. Zaslav stated the two companies would spend $20 billion annually on content and aim to expand their streaming services like HBO Max, which is now Max, to reach 400 million global subscribers. They also aimed to achieve $3 billion in cost savings via synergies within 2 years. On June 1, it was announced that the merged company would be named Warner Bros. Discovery with the tagline,
"The stuff that dreams are made of." Huh?
A quote from the 1941 Warner Bros. Film The Maltese Falcon. Zaslav explained that the company would aspire to be the most innovative, exciting, and fun place to tell stories in the world, with Warner Bros.' creativity and taking bold risks and Discovery's global brand of innovation and inspiration. Also, in case you're wondering what happened in that period, they talked about merging Discovery Plus with HBO Max, a possible sale of the CW's majority stake or all of it, the merger being approved on March 11, 2022, and finally the merge happening on April 8, 2022. Overall, it was just business babbling about when the both of them would finally merge. Anyways, beginning August 3, 2022, 4 months after Warner Bros. And Discovery merged, they decided to do something no one saw coming: tax write-offs. A few months after that catastrophe, Glitch Productions would be teasing a new show while also talking about how animation has been treated in recent times.
You know, shows have tried to do that, like Owl House and Infinity Train, all to be cancelled because it's not what streaming services are looking for right now. It really sucks.
It was called The Amazing Digital Circus, and when I first saw the teaser, I thought it wouldn't be too big, but oh boy, was I wrong about it once it came out 9 months later. So the natural response to this huge breath of fresh air would be to make videos about Warner Bros. Discovery treating animation badly and indie animation winning against them, right? Well, that's what YouTubers did. Wrong company? So it turns out that instead of targeting Warner Bros. Discovery for how horribly it's treated animation recently, these YouTubers instead targeted Disney, a company that has also mistreated animation for a while but not as bad as Warner Bros. Discovery has. In this video, I'm going to be debunking the flaws of these videos about indie animation versus Disney, or Hollywood in general. First, they all discuss The Amazing Digital Circus.
Recently, the pilot episode of The Amazing Digital Circus landed on YouTube, quickly amassing over 100 million views in just 4 weeks, becoming the most viewed indie animated show on YouTube.
The Amazing Digital Circus has risen to be one of the most popular and financially successful indie animation projects of all time.
The Amazing Digital Circus is the next course of our delicacies.
Okay, to be fair, these videos were made because of how successful the pilot was, but are we gonna forget about Hazbin Hotel? You know, an older pilot from 2019 that proved how indie animators like VisiPop can make a show that meets the standards for television.
We've been graced with delights such as Hazbin Hotel and their sister show Hell of Boss, or The Amazing Digital Circus, Lackadaisy, or even smaller projects like Ramshackle and Farfetch.
Several other indie animated series have garnered millions of views on YouTube, including Hell of a Boss, Hazbin Hotel, Lackadaisy, and Murder Drones.
So they do mention Hazbin Hotel or Hell of a Boss, but now here's another problem. These are the same 4 to 5 shows they keep bringing up. Yes, I know they're the most popular, but I would appreciate it if they at least gave more attention to shows like Monkey Wrench, MechWest, and Hands Up, Alien Scoops, Sarketsu, Desaru, Battle Giant, Edgeworld, Aztec Movie, Sublet Tango Mustard, Homestar Runner, Alphabet Lord, Cheese Wars, Bug Boat, Long Gone Gutch, Farfetch, God School, Big Top Burger, Animated Animation, Queen Sucker, Ongazelli, Ramshackle, Dinosaur, The Legend of Flicky Pie, Charlie the Unicorn, Monster Lab, Menace Combat, Spooky Room, Lumi and the Great Big Galaxy, Interstellar Ranger Commence, NUXP, Godspeed, Skibbity Toilet. Okay, you can't mention everything.
In contrast, Disney has struggled recently with repetitive movies and a lack of original ideas. This drop in originality has led to declining stock prices and movie earnings for Disney. Once praised for innovation, Disney now faces criticism for an endless series of remakes and sequels without the creativity they were known for.
While everyone is rightfully focusing on the fall of the House of Mouse, with Disney suffering one of its worst years financially, creatively, and in the public's goodwill, a major phenomena is largely going unnoticed.
Yes. I love when masterpieces such as The Owl House get cancelled while Big Mouth gets its 8th season. This is great. I'm so happy.
And here's the part where I talk about how they criticize Disney in their videos. Don't get me wrong, Disney has done horrible things before, but they didn't happen recently, so they aren't the main topic of this video. Anyway, the first two videos talk about Disney's downfall because of their stocks going down and lack of creativity. This is correct, but what about other companies?
Universal's Super Mario Bros. Was the top animated film of the year, earning the most money overall.
Despite their parent company Universal trimming trees during the writers' strike of 2023, which they got fined $250 for. Also, don't forget about DreamWorks' box office failure film Ruby Gillman.
Similarly, Sony's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse had a strong impact with a record-breaking $120 million debut domestically, making it the best opening for Sony Pictures Animation.
It also has one of the worst working conditions for an animated film, which is funny because this wasn't the first time an animated film by Sony had awful working conditions. Furthermore, here's an image of Warner Bros. Discovery's stock numbers compared to Disney's. We'll get to the WB section soon. Anyways, Big Mouth and the Owl House are owned by different companies with different demographics. The better comparison would be a show like Inside Job, which people complained about when it was cancelled while Big Mouth was renewed.
On YouTube, one wacky, insane episode brought enough views to bury 4 Disney productions. When that happens, you know that Disney has lost its cultural relevance and influence. An indie production has unequivocally destroyed the House of Mouse in 2 months' time.
Okay, there's a difference between a web cartoon pilot and a Disney film. Yes, Wish has a mixed reception while Digital Circus's reception is high, but that doesn't mean Digital Circus truly wins against Wish. You have to take into account how much money Digital Circus has made against Wish.
So if we raise the earnings from $3,000 per view to anywhere between $5,000 to $6,000 per million views, Glitch has already made over $875,000 to potentially over $1 million, giving them a potential profit ranging anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000 buckaroos.
This is plausible since Glitch said Murder Drones cost $200,000 to $250,000 for an episode, but I don't think that's enough compared to Wish's box office bomb.
Look My Way was a similar story. Did you know it was originally a fan song? Imagine being that involved in loving of your fan base.
Imagine.
Couldn't be Disney. They'll just make sure to keep their IP off of a child's grave and produce a mid-100-year anniversary with like 0 heart.
You made a good point about the Spider-Man grave situation, but as I said in a comment, it's hard to be involved in your fan base as a $1 million company than as an indie animator. Also, in small defense of Wish, it was butchered by Disney's executives. Just see the concept art for proof.
The team also does live streams and Q&As. The old cast used to host live streams where they would improv in character, while a cleanup animator, Ashley Nichols, would animate on screen. They dubbed it the Hootie Cast. There's so much love and passion coming from Spindlehorse Studios, and I cannot wait for what they do next.
Don't forget about the nepotism and paying animators $35 per second.
This team also does live streams where you can watch animators work while they answer questions or just have fun. You don't get that sort of freedom and interaction with bigger productions. Like, you would never get a live stream about animating the next Despicable Me movie.
This is such a dumb take. Do you want Illumination to risk themselves spoiling their next movie? The closest you'll get to this is live panels about the process of animating a movie by them.
Similar to the movies, the more recent Disney Channel shows have drawn criticism for their lack of originality and authenticity. Many of the newer shows are viewed as lower quality renditions of Disney's classics.
You can also say the same thing about Cartoon Network because most of their recent shows look very similar, as in thin lines, unique eyes, and a beanhead for the characters.
Time and time again, Disney has exhibited poor decision-making skills, like when the higher-ups at the company scrutinized the network's most popular shows, Gravity Falls and The Owl House.
Don't forget about Craig McCracken's Wander Over Yonder. It moved to Disney XD after 8 episodes and had terrible time slots for new episodes. Kind of, but it's more like teaching Warner Bros. Discovery a lesson for sabotaging animation. You know what, it's time to jump into the Warner Bros. Discovery section alongside talking about a former indie company that was recently shut down by them. so this was uploaded while editing my video. Let's see what to criticize in it before we actually move on to the WBD section.
Next, we'll compare Candy Carrier Chaos to Disney's first big success of this year, Pixar's Inside Out 2, and then we'll compare it to Disney's current streaming flagship series, Star Wars: The Acolyte.
What about Warner Bros. Discovery's successes?
Sure, YouTube, Disney+, Netflix, HBO Max, and all those other streaming sites all have slightly different ways of counting what is a view and what isn't, but there's no denying it. Glitch Productions is performing on par with Hollywood and streaming blockbusters, and is doing it at a fraction of the cost.
Okay, yeah, that's something I agree with, especially because of the existence of this clip.
Really recently, over these past few months, a lot of executives just in around the animation Hollywood sphere have been contacting us and have just all been asking, how the heck do you guys do it? What is going on? How are you getting this fan following?
And what about all of that impressive money Inside Out 2 is raking in? The sad thing is that all those earnings are likely going to be devoured by the production black hole that is Disney's Star Wars, and more reshoots for the live-action Snow White remake, and yet another round of reshoots and a script rewrite for Captain America 4, Brave New World. All of those hundreds of millions of dollars are getting gobbled up really, really quickly.
I know this was last year, but what about Barbie's box office money? That didn't save Coyote vs. Acme from being written off. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to move on now.
We rapping now? We rapping?
Warner Brothers and Discovery. Where do I begin with you two? Okay, it's more so Discovery to blame, but I still have a small blame on Warner Bros. As well. As I said in the intro, beginning August 3, 2022, Warner Bros. Discovery decided to do a lot of tax write-offs to save money from their big merger. To be fair, you have to save money somehow after a big merger, but what they decided to write off was devastating for animation fans, especially those who worked on these films and shows. First, they wrote off The Batgirl and Skop Holiday Haunt, two films that were near completion. At least the latter is complete but can't be released because of the tax write-off. It was also announced that the Looney Tunes movies The Day the Earth Blew Up and Bye Bye Bunny would not move forward on HBO Max and be shopped elsewhere. Speaking of HBO Max, second, they removed many animated shows from HBO Max that were beloved like Infinity Train, Close Enough, OKKO, Final Space, and Mao Mao Heroes of Pure Heart. They even wrote off an animated film from Cartoon Network Studios called Driftwood. Finally, they laid off many employees from HBO Max, Warner Bros. Animation, which included the entire Bye Bye Bunny production team, and Rooster Teeth due to the merger, beginning a domino effect across Hollywood. Speaking of Rooster Teeth, the layoffs also led to many former employees exposing RT's toxic work environment, such as Nomad of Nowhere's creator Jordan Whitman, who also created the indie pilot Port by the Sea, writing a tweet longer about his awful experience with Rooster Teeth. I'll talk more about RT soon. Anyway, throughout 2023, Warner Bros. Discovery would release awful shows and films such as the adult Scooby-Doo spin-off Velma, and The Flash starring Ezra Miller. Tax write-offs also continued for a while, with Coyote vs. Acme announced to be written off despite its completion, but then said decision was reversed 4 days later and they allowed the filmmakers the option to swap it to other distributors. The studios interested in buying the distribution rights were Amazon, Apple, and Netflix. But despite said interests, there were currently no hard offers, and Dave Green was crafting his PR campaign. A month later, more studios like Paramount and Sony were screened, with Netflix and Paramount making bids. There is more to the story, however, as I'll talk about sooner when it comes to what WBD did this year. Cartoon Network also had a bad time, losing time to Adult Swim and their Cartoonito brand failing when Jessica's Big Little World was announced to have only one season. They even lost their studio and now reside in the Warner Bros. Second Century building as a label. Furthermore, despite its massive success, the Adult Swim trailer Running with Pippi wasn't greenlit for a series. However, they also released the TV adaptation of The Last of Us, Unicorn Warriors Eternal, an American dub of Villainous, My Adventures with Superman, Barbie, Fiona and Cake, and Scavenger Rings. Also, Bye Bye Bunny's writing was finished, but now to talk about what Warner did this year. On February 9th, 2024, Warner Bros. Discovery was reported to have rejected the bids from Netflix, Amazon, and Paramount, as they were selling the film for $75 to $80 million, but no distributors met the price. they considered shelving and deleting the film for a tax write-off again, but it's currently in limbo as of this video. This decision led to online outrage with hashtag Release Coyote vs Acme trending across the internet, as the film was said to be great and comparable to Who Framed Roger Rabbit when it was first written off. Even Eric Basil, who voice acted for the film, supported this trend during the 51st Anna Awards.
I hate to be political, but release Coyote versus Acme!
As of now, the film remains available for acquisition, as a Warner Bros. Spokesperson told the New York Times. Then on March 6th, Rooster Teeth announced that they would shut down in the next several months, citing the reasons being fundamental shifts in consumer behavior and monetizations across platforms, advertising, and patronage. This was because their first subscription failed and the company as a whole was unprofitable for a decade. Keep in mind, this was the same company that owned Red vs. Blue, Ruby, and Camp Camp, so while it makes sense to feel very bad at first, especially for the estimated 150 employees, you have to remember the number of controversies this company had as well. There's so much though, so I'm gonna have to keep it brief and recent, and you'll see why it's important for indie animation. In June 2019, there were anonymous reviews from Glassdoor about the company harvesting a negative crunch culture of unpaid hours and poor management for their animators. It was alleged that Grey Hendog was responsible for it, as he was taking lots of resources for the production of Genlock, and after 2 days he stepped down thanks to the allegations. In October 2022, hundreds of workers were laid off and a certain employee named Kaden Jensen was a part of it. She wrote a tweet longer about its toxic work environment and how she was treated during her time at the company. As I said before, it led to many former employees speaking up about their experiences with RT, with the company apologizing for it, but it didn't fix anything. With all that out of the way, RT was also attempting to save themselves by releasing Ruby Volume 9 and a Justice League crossover movie in hopes that they could make a profit. Unfortunately for RT, they were received poorly and it didn't help that they were expensive to make. Man, it would suck for them if two former Ruby animators close to Monty made better animation with a better story that was also cheaper to produce. Taking into account their not so user-friendly website that's now closed and rewarding their toxic fanbase, you could see why the company was unprofitable for a decade and finally shut down this year. So what can indie animation learn from Rooster Teeth's decline and shutdown? Do not foster a toxic work culture and do not reward toxic fanatics. Sorry Kevin and Luke, it wasn't really Warner's fault but instead RT's for how bad it's become over the years. As of now, all of their properties are in the vault for who knows how long. Ruby might have a chance to get out of it though since Dylan Gu has expressed interest in acquiring the series. How good was the public response to this deal from him? Really good. Wait a second, I forgot about something. Oh, right. I don't know how Shane feels today, but we'll have to wait and see how things play out once Dylan gets the rights to continue Ruby or not. So, this happened. I hope it comes back on YouTube for free. Please, 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 please. Now for the good things Warner Bros. Discovery did this year. Smiling Friends Season 2 began airing, and Season 3 was renewed. Meerkat Manor is going to get an animated movie adaptation. Anime will be focused on more. Ironic. Cartoon Network is making a comeback. And The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, will release in the fall of this year. Fun fact, that last one is being distributed by GFM Animation, making it the first theatrical Looney Tunes film not to be distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures.
Hey, you forgot to mention that Warner Bros. Discovery looks down on Rooster Teeth so much that none of their IPs appeared in Ready Player One and Space Jam 2.
You're right, because despite those films relying on an absurd number of cameos for people to watch, it goes to show that Warner Bros. Didn't care a lot about RT. Anyway, it's time to talk about what other studios have done to mistreat animation. Paramount from 2023 to 2024 was looking down on its animation side by not promoting its original film Under the Boardwalk and putting the new Nickelodeon series Zokin of Planet Ruby on Amazon Prime without promoting it too. There were also talks about Warner and Paramount merging, but fortunately it didn't happen as it was just a proposal. Meanwhile, DreamWorks was in talks to implement AI into their movies and laid off around 40 to 50% of their employees after the trailer release for The Wild Rose Robot. Speaking of The Wild Robot, this will be their last film animated in-house because they will start outsourcing to other countries after 2024. As for Universal's other studio, Illumination spoke out against AI, going as far as to make a Super Bowl ad of Despicable Me 4 about it. Their marketing for the movie also mocked Disney's and Warner Bros. Discovery's business practices. This isn't mistreating animation, but I had to point this out. Netflix decided to restructure their union, causing many people to lose their jobs and cancel 2 animated films titled Escape from Beverly Hill and Tonga. Finally, Disney and Pixar announced that they would focus on more sequels than originals due to how poorly their recent originals have performed at the box office, not knowing that their poor marketing is what led to these originals performing badly. As a bonus, Glitch got into trouble by replacing Tori's voice actress and their Glassdoor reviews aren't too great. Fortunately, the controversy was solved and everything is fine for now. Also, this is my opinion, but I'm somewhat suspicious about Glitchin'. Like, why is the behind the scenes content locked behind a paywall? Isn't it going to get leaked anyway since it's just BTS content? And wouldn't it be hard for them to manage a Discord server with teenagers in it? I'd recommend promoting an unofficial Discord server like Jack and Jellyfy does with Ace Twin Central if you want to connect with fans more. That was my video about everything wrong with indie animation versus Disney. Don't get me wrong, you can hate the House of Mouse all you want since they're the most popular out of all the Hollywood studios, but at least be glad that they're giving you content, even if it's mid to awful, as opposed to the Tunnel of Bunny, or Zalzal's evil anti-cartoon layer, who's writing off content that can be good. But then again, we have this, so I guess that makes up for it? Nah, I don't think so. David Zaslav, you did big time for Hollywood and their animation industry, did you? I'm surprised none of you focused on him in Discovery for your indie animation videos, because while I get that Disney's competition with indie animation was weak, Warner Bros. Discovery had no competition because they wrote off most of their shows and films like Coyote vs. Acme. I will end this video with some memes I did, so anyways, goodbye. I suppose Ruby Rose can be a fighter in multiverses, but only if you kiss my nugget.
Greater consciousness, hullabaloo!